Fungal rhinosinusitis is a clinical entity, and we ENT surgeons are treating this fungal rhinosinusitis for a long time. Fungal rhinosinusitis is divided into a acute invasive, chronic invasive and chronic non-invasive. So this acute invasive or acute fulminant rhinosinusitis is caused by aspergillus and also by mucor. Okay, so aspergillus, both are aspergillus fumigatus and aspergillus flavus, and also mucor. So this mucormycosis in association with COVID-19 infection is COVID associated mucormycosis, which is a trending topic or a very recent advance. So a misinformation, it is otherwise called a black fungus. So today I will explain what is this black fungus and what is COVID associated mucormycosis. Okay, so today's topic is COVID associated mucormycosis or CAM, or otherwise called the black fungus. Okay, so I'll explain what is this mucormycosis, what is the mode of spread, what are the pathogenesis, and whether it spread from human to human, and what are the precautions, what are the clinical features, and what is the treatment to be done, and also the preparations of amphotericin B. Why I said this a misinformation? Because these mucorales are not black fungus. The black fungus, actually they are a group of fungus having melanin in their cell wall. But unfortunately, this COVID associated mucormycosis is got a popularity as black fungus. So anyway, I am not going to change the name. Let it continue as black fungus, but we should know, we should be thorough about the clinical features, the diagnostic methodologies, and also the treatment. And this mucormycosis was initially known as zygomycosis, previously known as zygomycosis, and it is caused by a group of fungus involving the Rhizopus, Rhizomucor, Absidia, Cunninghamella, Apophyzomycosis, and of this the Rhizopus oryza is commonly associated with the mucormycosis. From where we get this infection? Like any other fungal mold, they are present in the environment, and they are seen, they are highly thermotolerant, and also they are found in organic substrates like what? Like decaying vegetable and fruit matters, then compost piles, then bread, also in animal excreta, crop debris, etc. And the major mode of transmission is dispersion of these sporangiospores. Sporangiospores by air is the major mode of transmission. Okay, and normally we inhale that. They are seen as common cells, but by the mucociliary reaction they are taken inside and they are destroyed by alveolar macrophages. And if they are cleared by the alveolar macrophages, how a patient get this? In immunocompromised patients, like in diabetes mellitus, cancer patient, organ or stem cell transplant patients, then long-term use of corticosteroids, then injection drug users, iron overload or hemostasis patients. In all these patients, this sporangiospore will germinate into hyphae and it will cause this mucormycosis. There is also another way of direct implantation into the skin following injuries like trauma, surgery, burns, etc. And it will manifest as cutaneous mucormycosis, and gastrointestinal mucormycosis is mostly seen in premature and low birth weight neonates also. Now we are having a high incidence of this mucormycosis among patients with COVID-19 infection, especially COVID-19 with long-term diabetes mellitus, and also patients who have received corticosteroids and also other immunosuppressants like this tocilizumab. So this COVID associated mucormycosis is having a high mortality, a high morbidity, exorbitant treatment cost, leading to a shortage of antifungal drugs. So this class will be exclusively for this COVID associated mucormycosis, and if you want me to explain other kinds of fungal rhinosinusitis, let me know that also. Okay, so COVID-associated mucormycosis. So, what is the pathogenesis of this COVID-associated mucormycosis? So, and unlike COVID-associated pulmonary aspergillosis, this COVID-associated mucormycosis is seen in mild to moderate SARS-CoV-2 infection patients also. And the strongest predisposing factor is a hyperglycemia seen in an undiagnosed patient with diabetes or in a long-term diabetic patient with a very bad glycemic control. So what happens there? A virulent trait of this mucorrhea or the mucor fungus is its ability or to predisposition for iron. Actually they grow on iron. Okay. So in a patient of diabetic ketoacidosis, these free ions are seen in the serum. That is, there is very high levels of this endogenous, iron in the serum. So what happens? This mucorrhea will go and bind with that, and they will nourish on this iron, and that will again increase their virulence. That is number one. Okay, one trait. And hyperglycemia will lead to increased expression of what? Second trait is increased expression of endothelial receptor cell, that is GRP78, increased expression. That will lead to dysfunction of the polymorphonuclear cells, and that will lead to impaired chemotaxis and defective intracellular killing. Okay, so these two will happen when the patient is having a high glucose level in the blood. And along with that, and these two effects are amplified by the use of corticosteroids or immunosuppressants by the susceptible host. What will the corticosteroids do? They will cause an impairment of the neutrophil migration, ingestion, and also phagolysosome fusion. Okay, it is phagolysosome fusion. And also there is a steroid-induced hyperglycemia. So all these will act as a vicious cycle and will cause inactivation of the security system of the body. In that case, this fungal spore will germinate into hyphae in a susceptible host, and they will invade into either into the if they are invading into the blood vessel, it will cause thrombosis and also tissue necrosis. Okay. That is the pathogenesis of CAM or COVID-associated mucormycosis. Okay, how and when to diagnose a CAM? Okay, that is clinical features. Okay, so actually there are two types of CAM. One is a concurrent, that is occurring along with the active COVID-19 infection. Okay, concurrent. And another one is sequential, that is occurring sequentially after weeks or months after recovery from COVID-19. So concurrent and sequential, and depending upon the clinical presentation, there are they are classified into 5 types of CAM. One that is rhino-orbitocerebral mucormycosis, ROCM. The second one is pulmonary. These two are comparatively common than the other 3 types of CAM. And the gastrointestinal mucormycosis is very rare, and it is seen in neonates, especially low birth weight and premature babies. Then disseminated mucormycosis has got a worse prognosis, and this is seen in severely immunocompromised and also uncontrolled diabetic patient. And another one, the 5th variety is primary cutaneous mucormycosis, as I already told, along with the spread. That is when this is direct insemination into the skin following trauma, after surgeries, burns, etc. We will get a primary cutaneous mucormycosis. So these are the 5 types of CAM. Now what are the clinical presentation of each one? And in the clinical findings, that of rhino-orbitocerebral mucormycosis, the clinical features are, initial clinical features are almost similar to that of an upper respiratory infection or of an acute sinusitis. So in the nose, what are things you get in the nose of this one? Okay. So in the nose you will have Initial phases, there will be nasal block, there will be nasal discharge, and the color of nasal discharge may be blackish or it is brownish, or in later stages it can go for a frank epistaxis. And also there will be nasal stuffiness, nasal congestion also, and on looking into the nose, nasal mucosa, there will be edema of the nasal mucosa, inflammatory changes in the nasal mucosa, or there will be blackish or brownish discoloration of the nasal mucosa along with the formation of a scar. Okay. And this scar in the nose or on the palate is a hallmark of an rhinocerebral mucormycosis. Okay, that is very important. This blackish scar on the palate or on the nasal cavity is a hallmark in the diagnosis of an rhinocerebral mucormycosis. Then on the eye. In early cases, there will be conjunctival edema, or there will be eyelid edema or conjunctival congestion, then discoloration of the conjunctiva, or there will be ptosis. Ptosis may be a sudden ptosis, or it will be after all these findings it can go for a ptosis. And also there will be in later stages, advanced cases, there will be diplopia, there can be loss of vision, or there will be difficulty in the limitation of the extraocular muscle movements. Proptosis can also. Pain. In which all regions pain? Pain can be a headache, or it can be pain in the cheek, or it can be a toothache. If there is a toothache, then that toothache can lead to loosening of the maxillary teeth, upper teeth, or it can be an eye pain. Eye pain can be around the eyelids, or it can be a retroorbital pain. Okay. Then also there can be paranasal sinus tenderness, or very similar to that of an acute sinusitis. It will be very difficult to differentiate at times. When in initial stages, high amount of suspicion is needed to differentiate it from an ordinary acute sinusitis from a CAM. Okay. So all this, and in later stages, it can go for thrombosis, especially if there is retinal artery thrombosis leading to sudden loss of vision, and also tissue necrosis. In advanced cases, when there is thrombosis and tissue necrosis, the patient can present with a sudden loss of vision or sudden ptosis, proptosis. And when it is involved in the cavernous sinus, then encephalitis, features of encephalitis, that is loss of consciousness, drowsiness, facial palsy, seizures. Okay, so that is regarding an ROCM. And if there is pulmonary CAM, then it will present with fever, cough, chest pain, hemoptysis, or there will be worsening of the chest symptoms. Okay. And this gastrointestinal CAM is very rare. As I already told, it is commonly seen in neonates, especially preterm and low birth weight neonates. The next one is how to diagnose this CAM. So, diagnosis. This CAM is a medical emergency. Empirical treatment should be started even before diagnostic confirmation. So, apart from clinical features, the choice of diagnosis or the investigations of choice are the contrast enhanced CT bar MRI in case of an ROCM, and plain CT scan of the chest in case of pulmonary aspergillosis, and the tissue diagnosis is confirmed by staining bar culture, fungal culture from appropriately collected samples. Investigation will show features of diabetic ketoacidosis, and also the total count will be elevated, and also the acute phase reactants will be elevated. And in ROCM, for diagnostic confirmation, an endoscopy should be done, and the debrided tissue or the tissue should be taken for biopsy. And we can also take nasal aspirate or the sinus aspirate, the nasal discharge, nasal scrapings, but this will not give a correct diagnosis because this mucor is seen as a commensal in the nose. So sometimes this nasal swab or the sinus aspirate or nasal discharge will give faulty result. KO stain can be done only using tissue samples. So do an endoscopy and debride the tissue or take tissue for biopsy, and it should be sent, divide that into 2 equal portions, and it should be one part should be sent in saline and other part in formalin, because this formalin will inhibit the fungal growth. So it should not be taken in formalin for culture. So one part in saline, and that should be done for sent for microscopy and culture, and the portion in formalin is sent for histopathological examination only. Okay, and the formalin should not be sent for fungal culture. That should be remembered. For fungal culture, you have to send the sample in saline. So that is why immediately after taking the tissue, divide that into 2 equal portions, and one in saline and one in formalin. Saline preparation should be processed immediately. The maximum period is for 2 hours. So it should be processed within 2 hours for KOS preparation. And in that you can see the aseptate hypha with the branching at 90 degree. Okay, this is how you see the KOS preparation, that is aseptate hyphae with branching at 90 degree. So that should be processed within 2 hours. Okay, and for culture, the medium is potato dextrose or 2% malt. What are they? It is usually asked in MCQs. The culture medium for CAM or any mucor are the same. That is, one is potato dextrose or 2% malt. Use cherry decoction, agar. Okay, so all these are culture medium, and you do incubation at 27 to 30 degree Celsius, and growth can be seen within 24 to 48 hours. You get fluffy white to grey or brownish hyphal growth. Okay, fluffy white to grey or brownish growth of hyphae, and here only sporangiosposaceae, no rhizoids, and in other varieties of rhizopus you get sporangiospores as well as rhizoids. Okay, so in fungal culture these are the culture medium, and of these we get potato dextrose is commonly used, incubated at 27 to 30 degrees Celsius, and growth is seen within 24 to 48 hours. Okay. And of the radiological investigation for nose and PNS, if it is the contrast enhanced CT scan, that is a must. And if you are suspecting a brain involvement, it is always better to go for an MRI of PNS with brain contrast studies. Okay, then only you get a definitive picture of all this in a ROCM. And if it is a pulmonary aspergillosis, bronchoalveolar lavage, go for a bronchoalveolar lavage for tissue samples, or you go for a mini bronchoalveolar lavage, a transbronchial biopsy or a CT guided biopsy from the lungs are needed to get a tissue. And in radiological evaluation of pulmonary cases, a plain CT scan is needed rather than a contrast enhanced CT scan. And the findings in lung CT in case of pulmonary mucor are usually a thick-walled lung cavity. That's number 1. 2. There can be pleural effusion and multiple pulmonary nodules, and also reverse halo sign. These are the 4 findings you get. Usually this thick-walled cavity is also seen in case of COVID-associated pulmonary aspergillosis that has to be differentiated from its pulmonary mucor. And in CT scan, presence of more than 10 pulmonary nodules, pulmonary nodules, and also reverse halo sign. We call it as atoll sign. Okay, this is usually asked in MCQ. Atoll sign, that is reverse halo sign. Okay, so this reverse halo sign, more than 10 pulmonary nodules, and also pleural effusion, presence of these 3 point more towards a pulmonary mucor more than a pulmonary COVID-associated pulmonary aspergillosis. Clear? So in lung CT, you will get multiple pulmonary nodules, reverse halo sign or atoll sign, pleural effusion, and also thick-walled lung cavities. The pulmonary tuberculosis also has to be ruled out by doing appropriate test. Okay, so these are the diagnostic methods in case of ROCM and also in pulmonary mucor. Anyway, it is a tissue and also radiology. These are the and also the clinical features. All the three will point towards in treatment. Okay, this is a true teamwork. Treatment of CAM is a true teamwork and it consists of the physician, then the ENT surgeon, intensivist, radiologist, microbiologist, ID, infectious disease specialist, then the radiologist, everyone. Control of diabetes and also diabetic ketoacidosis if present, that is the most important one. And then reduce steroids or reduce the dose of steroids and stop it as early as possible. That's the second thing. And also stop any other immunomodulating drugs. If you are giving any immunomodulating drugs, that has to be stopped. Next is surgical debridement. A thorough surgical debridement should be done to remove all the necrotic tissue because the antifungal penetration into the necrotic tissue is suboptimal. So that has to be removed by thorough surgical debridement. And if there is orbital involvement, you consult with an ophthalmologist, and if needed, orbital exenteration has to be done. Okay, then comes the medical treatment. So for the first step, adequate hydration has to be maintained. For that, insert either a peripherally inserted central catheter or a central venous catheter has to be inserted, and also adequate hydration, especially if you are giving amphotericin B. So preloading with normal saline is also needed. So maintain adequate hydration and start on antifungal. Antifungal, what are the antifungal? I will explain after this. And after that, a thorough monitoring for clinical, radiological and microbiological. What is that? Follow up with the radiological CT or MRI along with a repeat specimen for progression or worsening has to be monitored.